So this year, there's been an absolute ton of drama in the world of tequila regulation, and specifically with a website called Tequila Matchmaker. This drama includes things like Mexican authorities raiding the office of a company, it involves battles in the media, and it also involves a ton of different tequila brands having to scramble to basically wipe their online presence, or else they're going to face backlash from the regulatory body of tequila. And I've actually been covering all of this drama on my newsletter called In Good Spirits. So if you want to stay in the loop into any new goings on with this until I make another video possibly, go and subscribe. It's a free newsletter. I also have an entire list of all of my recommended tequilas in the newsletter that you can check out here. We have a couple of guest writers. We try to bring in some really interesting perspectives on the things going on in the online cocktail and online bartending, as well as the real bartending world. And before we get started, I am one man who owns a bar and I make content on the internet. I tried my absolute hardest to have journalistic integrity. I've reached out to folks in the industry who wish to remain anonymous in all of this. I've talked to some prominent figures within prominent brands that we all know and love, and they've given me a lot of information, as well as me trying to ask questions based on times that I've been down there in Mexico. I am not taking a stance on what is right or what is wrong in this. I am trying to be very neutral and just provide you guys with information. That being said, I could have gotten something or some of this wrong, but I find it important to talk about. But back to the drama. In this video, I kind of want to go over all of that, what's been kind of happening, and just to give you guys a little bit of insight into this crazy world. So Tequila Matchmaker is a website that I've referenced quite a ton of times on this channel and all of my content. And I even made a video about how you can tell if a tequila is good or not. And one of the ways is using Tequila Matchmaker. Tequila Matchmaker was actually launched originally as a website called tastetequila.com in 2009. And then it evolved to being Tequila Matchmaker. In its essence, Tequila Matchmaker is kind of like a Rotten Tomatoes, but for tequila brands. People can go on there, they can review their favorite tequilas, give an honest rating, talk about tastes, aromas, things like that, and it basically aggregates all of the scores, and you have a really nice database of a ton of these different brands crowdsourcing these reviews, which is great, right? It gives you a reference point to know if a tequila brand is well enjoyed by a large number of people or not. And Tequila Matchmaker was founded, I'm pretty sure over like 10 years ago, by a gentleman named Grover. I've actually only met Grover one time very quickly in passing at an event, but he's been doing this for a very long time. You might be thinking to yourself, well, that doesn't really sound like cause for drama. For the longest time, people just kind of ignored Tequila Matchmaker, except for people in the community. It started to slowly build steam over this last decade or so, and it's become a really popular website. And at some point in all of this, Grover got really interested into the production methods of tequila and trying to learn as much as he could about how brands are making their tequila or not. And there's an entire aspect of tequila production. It's about the use of additives. And I have this entire video over here that you can check out to go in depth about what they are and why they're used and why they aren't used. Tequila Matchmaker wanted to create a designation or separation of brands that were making tequila without additives. And on top of the rating system and database website, the folks at Tequila Matchmaker also started doing some of their own testing on different products to learn and try to see if tequila was made with additives or not. Grover made friends with a lot of distillers in the industry, and he was really getting to learn the ins and outs of all of this. At some point, he started kind of experimenting with his own tequila production to learn about the process. And that'll become important later on. They decided to create a designation and a list of what tequilas are additive-free or not, based on their own findings and studies and analysis. And this started to really catch fire. So you'd be able to go on their website and see whether or not this brand was confirmed by them to be additive free or not. And a lot of folks like myself, other content creators, started referencing this list and using it as a easy point where we can show people like, hey, it's not just me saying this. You know, there's this whole organization that does all of this testing and they kind of confirm or don't confirm if a tequila is being made with additives or not. And so really the drama starts because a lot of the big brands started to get very upset. And the CRT, which is the regulatory body of tequila, received their funding through all of the brands, not just the big brands, all of the brands that they regulate. Now, if you produce a larger amount, you are going to end up funding a lot more of the CRT based on how much work is required for them to do. Because every single barrel of tequila that is aging tequila, it needs to be sealed by the CRT, and they have inspectors going to distilleries daily. They're going to see if anybody has tampered with anything, double checking all of this stuff. The CRT started getting very kind of frustrated with the existence of Tequila Matchmaker. I think that through the proliferation of folks like myself who have been referencing them and really using it as talking points in videos to try to help folks discover, better products and better tasting products, it started to piss some people off. There are these stickers right here that you can see that says confirmed additive-free. These stickers started showing up on bottles last year. That really pissed off the CRT. Earlier this year, very early this year, at one point, the CRT basically announced that they were going to create their own labeling for whether or not a tequila was additive-free or not. And so essentially, CRT announced the launch of their own additive-free program back in the beginning of March. And then at the end of March, about like March 29th was when we published the newsletter, federal Mexican authorities raided Tequila Matchmaker's headquarters and confiscated a ton of their stuff, including some small stills that they were saying the folks from Tequila Matchmaker were distilling tequila outside of the regulatory body of the CRT. Some folks have argued that these stills were just used for studying and learning, and there's a whole part of tastetequila.com, the blog part of Tequila Matchmaker, that I used the Wayback Machine, and you could see that they listed just how they were using this to learn about tequila. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not sitting here talking about what was right and what was wrong. I'm just here to tell you that what was fact was the federal Mexican authorities raided their headquarters, took a bunch of their equipment, a bunch of their filming equipment, a bunch of their stuff in the middle of the night, kind of. It was kind of like a scary kind of thing. Luckily, the folks from Tequila Matchmaker weren't there. They were actually in New York the night of the raid, so thankfully nothing happened to them physically, other than all of their stuff getting confiscated. But then that created a legal battle. A lot of folks in the tequila drinking online community started posting things like free Grover and like all of this stuff, which went a little overboard because Grover wasn't in prison. It got a lot of attention within the community, and some folks were saying, oh, these brands need to like stand up to the CRT. Well, no brand was going to paint a target on their back and basically stand behind this brand, even though there were a lot of members in the later became the Additive-free Alliance, or at least the list of additive-free brands. Grover never went back to Mexico as far as I know. He then moved his headquarters to Florida, and the idea was to continue everything that Tequila Matchmaker was doing. They were going to start testing just commercially available products in the US, and to still keep up with their ability to test tequila and keep up the additive-free movement. And it's important to note that there were a lot of brands that have supported Tequila Matchmaker in their efforts, some of them helping out and giving Grover access to their distilleries to learn about, tequila production and all of these things. But at the same time, a lot of them all rely on the CRT because they're the only governing body of tequila. So if they piss off the people that are governing tequila, like that's not going to end well for the tequila brands. Grover tries to continue, and it is still continuing the work out of Florida, and they tried to fight back a little bit in the media. In July, there was a whole Wall Street Journal article published about Grover, Scarlett, and Tequila Matchmaker and their fight with the CRT and the Mexican authorities, which was really fascinating to read and see this play out on such a large and mainstream news source. One of the big things that kind of came out of this article is that Grover and Scarlett claim that they were set up. They are saying that they were set up, and that's what led to the raid, and that's what caused a lot of issues. And they also deny all of the charges. So needless to say, this was getting really juicy. And it wasn't the only article. There were other articles being published. It was kind of like a media blitz of everybody kind of taking an interest in it. And then while this isn't necessarily important on the surface to this topic, but I think it's also pertinent. At the beginning of August, there were a lot of rumblings that a lot of the big brands' sales were down by a lot. For example, Diageo announced in August that Casamigos sales were down 20% since the past year. There are a lot of factors that could be going in on this. People drinking a little bit less. That's a possibility. From what I heard from the inside of the industry as well, is that basically they fired their entire sales team, as well as trying to restructure a little bit. And so maybe this was as a response to a lot of folks now talking about other brands, and maybe some people were talking a lot of crap about Casamigos. But it kind of aligned with what I was hearing from other folks in the industry about how a lot of the big brands were suffering in sales. You even had Jose Cuervo come out with a campaign where they basically said, tell us that our tequila tastes good or we will beat you up with this UFC fighter.
Welcome. Do you know why you're here?
It was a really weird kind of tone-deaf commercial that they did as a partnership with UFC that I don't think really had the impact that they were looking for, and it just really seemed like a reactionary kind of take.
Did you just fart?
Tequila Matchmaker also announced that their additive-free alliance, or their additive-free listing, was going to be launched as a separate non-profit entity, meaning that they were not going to be able to make any profit from it, and it would be a 501c3 organization. And I believe that they were doing this as an effort to maybe appease some folks, because they were getting some criticism from people about what they were doing with their whole additive-free thing. So I think that trying to launch it as a 501c3 or as a non-profit was a way of trying to mitigate that a little bit. And they also said that they're going to expand their research and testing outside of just tequila. It was going to now include any agave product. And that brings us to this week's news. Last week, I actually published another newsletter on the 8th where we talked about how Tequila Matchmaker had to remove all of the brands on their website that said that they were additive free. They had to get rid of that completely.
In the next 24 hours, we will be removing all tequila brands from the Additive-free Alliance list, and this is not a joke.
And basically the CRT cracked down and basically said that any brand that was found to have anything listed anywhere with additive free or claiming to be additive free was gonna have some issues. And that actually ties us back to these stickers right here. These stickers, they started making an appearance last year on bottles, and quickly the CRT put an end to it. They basically said that no one was allowed to label anything additive free, anything like that, in terms of a sticker. But some brands actually had it built into their label that they were additive free, like written right there. With the news this week that basically all of these brands had to remove all of that, and they're really cracking down on anybody saying that, was kind of a shock. And I actually had a meeting with a brand that I won't name this week, and we were talking about how they basically had to scrub all of their online presence for anything that said additive free. So this is kind of a crazy another development in all of this. It's just a little nuts, right? So as a bit of a recap, basically now no brand is really allowed to say that they're additive free. They're not really allowed to talk about that aspect. It's a very interesting development in all of this, and it remains to be seen what the outcome of all of this will be. I know that some brands really had some crazy couple of weeks trying to figure all this out to make sure that they were complying with what the CRT is requiring them of now. Another interesting development over the course of this last year has been that a second regulatory body in Mexico has basically been approved. I don't know if it's been implemented yet, but another regulatory body of tequila apparently will exist. And so that's kind of the quick, short, I don't know how short this video really is, but the short version of all of this. If you want to read all of those articles that I did, they're linked down below. You can go through and read through all of the headlines that I wrote. It's a very fascinating development. I think that it's important for us in the online community, spirits community, to kind of talk about this stuff. I know a lot of folks are weary of talking about this because of the CRT's crackdown, and you know, a lot of us work with tequila brands. I work with tequila brands. A lot of people are, I don't want to put a target on my back. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to make an enemy of anybody, but I'm just trying to be open and honest and talk about this with the community. And like I said at the beginning of this video, I don't know everything, and if I got something wrong, please let me know. I have tried to call and talk to people in the industry about all of this to inform what we've written in the newsletter. It's one of the reasons why I've left it more in the newsletter, because I tried to take a real more journalistic approach to this rather than just like a reactionary, like my opinions kind of thing on it. I've talked to a lot of folks in the industry. I've tried to get real information so that I'm not just, you know, reacting based on what people are doing on the internet. But I find this whole situation fascinating. And one fascinating thing that I saw is that on the video that Tequila Matchmaker posted saying that they had to remove all of their brands within like, 48 hours, something crazy like that. Basically, there was a couple people commenting about how it's like the influencer's fault for, creating this boogeyman out of these additive things, and basically blaming people like me, people who make content and talk about this, blaming us for pointing a finger and like causing this to blow up or whatever. And it's like, in the way that I presented information, I've been over the top, but that's the nature of the internet, unfortunately. To make an impact and to get people to pay attention, you kind of have to be a little extraordinary in kind of the way that you're presenting things. And while I definitely understand that some people have taken an issue with how I've approached this subject and topic to get people to pay attention, I understand that. But at the same time, I don't know if you can fully blame myself or people like me who make content about this kind of stuff for being the reason why this is all happening, or that this is the reason why all this negative things are happening. Maybe that's just some copium on my part to just try to make myself feel better about all this. But I just think it seems a little, I don't know, it seems a little wrong to be like, oh, you guys are talking about what's happening, like you're the issue. Like that's like, not that I'm any sort of news source of any kind, but like that'd be like blaming, I don't know, like the newspaper for reporting something. I don't know. That was a really terrible example on my part, but I have always tried my best to just talk about things that I would enjoy and that I recommend. If I've ever come across as like some giant authority figure in all of this, I'm just a guy who owns a bar and I make content. But this stuff I find important and I think it's interesting, and I think that there's a community of people who talk about this and enjoy and engage with this kind of stuff. And so that's why I wanted to make this video. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too long. Like I said, if you want to check out the newsletter, it's where I've been posting a lot of this stuff, where I go more in depth into all the things I talked about today, which you can check out right down below. And yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And I have some really cool stuff coming soon. To be honest with you guys, it's been very difficult to make content lately with the rebrand of my restaurant and some stuff in my personal life happening. It's been very tough to get new content out on a regular basis. I've basically been posting every 2 weeks. Hopefully I will pick back up the pace of posts. And yeah, let me know what you guys think about this whole crazy Tequila Matchmaker situation. I find it very fascinating. Cheers. Later, guys.